Hey guys! Today I have writer, director, and actor Josh Ruben, as well as Aaron Kheifets, a writer, actor, and the host of Make Cool Shit, a podcast that dedicated its entire first season to documenting the making of Josh's first feature film, Scare Me. Before we really get started, and I know this is pretty cliche, but I'm going to wax ghost face for a second here. What's your favorite scary movie?
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
Aaron, I don't think I know this about you.
Okay, I have a boring answer and I have a good answer. The boring answer is Cabin in the Woods.
What is this? What are these? What are you doing with these?
Okay, I get it. I'll leave the
No.
books.
Who gave you these? Who taught you about these?
I learned it from you, okay? I learned it from watching you!
I love Cabin in the Woods. I think it's such a good movie. It is somewhat scary, but it's not really a horror movie. It's like it's a high concept, like
Fantasy, sci-fi, thriller.
Fantasy sci-fi thing that's dressed up as a horror movie.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about it was I saw it in Times Square, and afterward I went to the bathroom and I saw these guys who had just watched it as well, and we were all standing at the urinals, and this guy went, it was like, man, it was good. I don't know that it was a horror, but it was good. I liked it. And like that reaction of like confused enjoyment is like, I think what we all hope for.
Yeah, definitely.
But the real answer is Night of the Living Dead.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
I am legitimately terrified of zombies, which doesn't make any sense. It's like not a rational fear. There's so many things for us rationally to be afraid of. Heart disease, car accidents, lots of stuff. I know zombies aren't real, and yet if I just sit here and I imagine a horde of zombies coming down the street that I can't see, my heart will start to race. It like does it for me. So that's it.
Especially living in New York City, like on your bike and looking around when you start thinking like, oh, if everyone started coming after me and they were hungry for me, that'd be bad.
I'm lucky that no one's ever been hungry for me in my life. Yeah.
Sam.
Oh, you guys are awesome. Josh, what about you?
I got my good answer and my basic batch vanilla horror film answer. My basic one is Jaws.
Small, you son of a bitch!
Very Jaws.
Favorite movie?
I grew up on Jaws. Jaws is my formative film. I do think it's a horror film. I pick up something new about every time I watch it. And I think it did like solidify something in me that I love watching, films with like serious actors, but in the genre, like, Titans, like Robert Shaw and Roy Scheider, but in like what could be considered like a horror film or genre film is so incredible. It's also like, having recently watched Taking a Pelham 1-2-3, watching another Robert Shaw movie, but a comedian or a comic like Walter Matthau in like an action movie or very serious movie. I love cross-pollination. It's my new term. So I feel like across genres. So anyway, Jaws I think solidified that in me, like seeing great actors go up against monsters, which they do in Jaws. But I think one of my favorites that hits all sides of the palette for me is Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn. Possessed hands, chainsaw murders, shotgun kills. It's got a satisfying wink in the end that he's going to end up in another world. It's got giant monsters. It's got sexual assault by a vine. It's got pretty much everything a horror movie could possibly you could cram into a horror film. And another reason why I love Cabin in the Woods, because it's it's so heavily influenced by it.
Actually, those are all part of like my top 10. So
yeah.
If you had to pick one, what's your top one?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Just one, or do I get a good and a bad one like you guys?
Yeah, good, bad.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
go
good,
ahead.
good. Let's be fair. Good,
Yeah,
good.
well, all of them are, and anything that's good, even if it's bad and campy, is just excellent horror comedy, anyways. But my I think guilty pleasure is probably, and I know this is a weird one, especially because I'm a woman, but Rosemary's Baby. Is probably one of my favorite movies, and I think it's just because it was well before its time as far as like women's rights and like kind of bringing attention to abuse in plain sight, like abuse dressed up so pretty and nice and such a fancy you know apartment building, and getting everything she really wants, but also like secretively she's being taken advantage of the entire time and no one else is aware of that. So it spoke a lot to, as far as I'm concerned anyways, like where just in the last 50 years women have come, from like not being able to even have a credit card in the 1960s to now like I can technically get a loan. Like,
In principle.
Yeah.
in
The
theory.
gaslighting Cassavetes did in that movie was so terrifying. Like
Oh,
I'd
yeah.
only seen that movie in the past maybe 2 years. It was a criminally it was criminally long for me to come around to it, and then to see it. I mean, it was the ultimate like gaslighting, toxic,
Yeah.
evil man. And they've been a thing for a while.
Well,
They've been
yeah, I
around for a
mean,
bit.
you evil white men, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What really shocks me is that Polanski's the one that fucking directed that shit. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, of all fucking people.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a progressive, forward-thinking guy he is.
Right? Totally.
I didn't know. I didn't know. That's my Polanski impression. I
It's,
didn't know. I
it's
knew.
terrible. Not your impression, sorry.
I knew. I know.
I think my other one would be 28 Days Later, just because
so
I'm like the exact opposite, Aaron. I'm sorry. I thrive off of zombie films. Actually, short story genre wise, that's what I go to is apocalyptic zombie thriller horror, and that's actually
Oh, I
one
love
I
it.
just got
28 Days
published
Later
most
is
recently.
incredible. That's one of my favorites. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredible.
But no, like fast moving zombies for the first time in cinema history, that was fucking scary.
Yeah.
I mean, I was pretty young. I was 13 when that movie came out, but holy shit. Like,
Right.
it was great. Josh, first one's for you.
Yeah.
You have a firm grip on comedy with your success with like college humor, and you just have this effortless ability to elicit laughs. At least for me, surprisingly, my boyfriend too. He doesn't really laugh at comedy, or especially comedy horror, that much, but you got him to laugh quite a few times. Was it difficult to put together a screenplay that you were able to rest both solidly in the horror genre and the comedy genre, especially as like your first project?
That's a great question. It wasn't difficult for me to, as a comedian by nature, to write a horror script or something that did end up skewing dark, because it is inherently funny. This character is inherently me. There's me in all of these characters and in these dynamics, and I write what I know, but I think first and foremost, I was a horror fan before I was a comedy fan. My older sister was the comedy nerd in the house, and so I was watching Stephen King's Cat's Eye and Tales from the Dark Side, both the series and the movie, and Friday the 13th, both the series and the movie. And Freddy Krueger was like a cartoon character to me. So writing it was a hell of a lot of fun. I think I think if anything, my dream was always to be considered like a serious actor before I was known as like a a comedian or a comic actor. I took Strasberg classes in New York, and wanted to wear the black turtleneck, and I studied under Mike Nichols was one of my instructors. I went to school in New York, And so I wanted to be one of those kind of serious types. So my goal was to not only showcase what I could do, but also showcase what this, the actors I was playing opposite can do. And the difficult part really came in the edit, like crafting the scares, like finding the scare. That's still, I think, something that's tricky for me. And I'm curious to see how the world will react to my next film, because it's, there's a science to that. I try to study what Carpenter does and how he does it, and what James Wan does and how he does it. But that was the difficult part.
Sorry, that was a perfect response. There's a couple of things I'm probably going to address with you again later.
Yeah.
You almost tag every single one of my future questions.
That's all right. I've been doing this since October 1st, like last year. It's like, oh, okay, well, writing. Yeah.
Understandable. For you, Aaron, you mentioned in an interview with Downright Creepy that during the process you got to see, and this is a quote, brilliant people be brilliant at their craft, fail anyways, then pick themselves up and be brilliant again. And I feel like this is a common sentiment that creative individuals just feel like inherently you fail time and time again, but the difference between complete failure and eventual success is just being able to pick yourself up again. How do you feel that documenting that no bullshit kind of, you seeing the ups and downs of making Scare Me would be beneficial to other creative individuals down the line?
I think obviously that's a message that we all ought to be taking to heart, and I've found documenting this journey very inspiring for myself, and I'm now writing a kind of horror feature kind of because of that.
Nice.
But the focus for me is actually a little bit different from that. And obviously we all take from it what we take from it. And I hope that there's enough room in the podcast for everybody to glean different things. But something that I've been thinking about a lot is less the tenacity, although that's certainly there and important, of like, I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to make it work. And rather redefining what it means for you to make it work, right? Josh and Brennan set out to make something they would be proud of, right? It's become very successful, and obviously they're not upset about that. But but that wasn't their goal in starting, and I think that is incredibly inspiring for me. It certainly helped me refocus my goals, not to get like too insanely nihilistic, but like, we are all here for such a short period of time. We're going to like spend our time here. We're going to die. Nobody's going to remember us. Like, that's just the fact. Like, even like famous people, we remember like one person a generation. We remember like a few people a generation, right? It's like, nobody cares about your life but you, the person who's living it. And to find the thing that makes you happy, that brings you joy and fulfillment, and to make that your definition of success, right? Something you can be proud of, you personally can be proud of, is like, I think redefining that bullseye has really been the thing for me that I found super inspiring.
That's an awesome answer. Thank you. That's perfect. Like, I actually personally don't always like aim for the very tip top, like as far as like, oh, I could be, a famous movie writer or anything like that, because that's not really personally my goal. My goal is, just as a writer, to be able to write and to be able to say like, that was a part of my life and that was what I did for a living, so that just very incredibly touching for me anyways.
and Josh's story is like a lot about the people that he collects along the way, right? It's all these people that want to work with him and he enjoys working with. Mm-hmm. And like the importance of that, as opposed to like, I'm gonna write this brilliant screenplay even though I'm a complete asshole and like nobody likes me, you know what I mean?
Polanski.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no laptop throwing in this show or in this journey. It's all grace and a lot of gratitude. That's how you get done.
Considering the stress that you guys faced, like, I was actually surprised there wasn't more dramatic stuff happening. Like, there were a lot of like obstacles and pitfalls, but like there was really no like headbutting except for, you know, that one instance. But I mean, that's typical for anyone working with other people. Like eventually you're going to end up butting heads with someone. And I think what makes the difference between, you know, just a successful social experience with life is being able to work with other people the way it seems like you guys did.
When we were figuring out the story for this podcast, we were like, who? There's no antagonist in this at all, right? What is the story? And so, you know, I figured out pretty early on, it's a man versus nature story, right? It's like these guys are gonna fucking summit Everest. Some shit is gonna go wrong along the way.
It is a little bit like Stephen King, but look like you know, this for the few people that have read 11/22/63, all 1,200 pages of it. But the cogs of time, or the cogs of kinetic energy working against you, like if you're going to try and prevent Kennedy's assassination, it's like time will force itself against you. Like trucks will suddenly be stopped in the middle of the road if you're on the way to get Lee Harvey Oswald. And that was kind of like, there was honestly at every turn, as you see documented in Make Cool Shit. I mean, the day one, the weather, followed by. I mean, down to the fact that our cinematographer was the only one with a four-wheel drive vehicle. So as exhausted as he was after the 12-hour days, having to like wanting to, not even necessarily having to, but wanting to take care of just at the very least his camera crew to make sure they all got home safe. You know, it was really kind of phenomenal. And I feel guilty. I think at one point I mentioned this. I don't know if this makes it. I do feel like, I mean, I know I was quite criminally relaxed throughout this process. And I think a piece of it is because I've made thousands of videos, you know, over the course of my career, short form videos, and been on many sets. So I've seen things fuck up and how to fuck up and the like, A, but B, we were as prepared as we could be, short of, you know, blizzard prep, short of salting driveways and, you know, handing out Patagonias. So anyway.
No, that's fair. That's totally fair. It's so true in life. Like you just hit obstacle after obstacle, especially when you're really trying to drive towards a goal. So that was a pretty awesome point you made there. Continuing with you, Josh, and this is kind of a longer one, so bear with me. One of your lines to Aya in the movie was, "Who are you, Uta Hagen?"
Get up, use the space, and scare me!
Who are you, Uta Hagen?
And so Hagen, she famously taught acting in like a method way after learning what Stanislavski, is that his name? Stanislavski's method. That method concept is based on an actor's ability to produce a natural performance by pulling their own experiences from life to get in touch with how their own character might feel about it. And considering your character is not based on you, but it has a lot of your characteristics as a writer, as an actor, like you brought that into your character. So how does your experience play into creating Fred's character?
That's a great question. Another knockout. It's twofold. I've worked with a lot of this type of man very closely through many, many, many years, in many different ways, in many different iterations and forms. I also, you know, I honed into the sad sack, envious part of myself and just kind of lived there, and then heightened that or lifted that up with theatricality. So I'm someone who's very aware of the sound of my voice and of my body and all the things I'm self-conscious of. And also, like, you know, I think this is maybe the curse of the mimic. Like, I like doing impressions and mimicking other people and but I'm very aware of that. I don't like the sound and the look of who I am just when I am. I need to alter it. You know, that's like our curse, you know, right? So a piece of what I did too was like pushing through, not only to like lose a little bit of weight to know that I wanted to look a certain way on camera, but also to speak a certain way, to lift it up and like I don't know, just there's an acting done. I don't know how else to put it, but it's like, put like projecting a little bit more. It's a little more performative version of myself and these people that I've known, that I've worked with, and it's just kind of honing in on that envy. There's an energy that you could just hang on to. It's almost like with an Uta Hagen or a Stanislavski or a Lee Strasberg. It's like almost like you pick a verb and you stay on it. Like George Morrison, one of my acting teachers who taught at Yale and then taught this little program he founded with Mike Nichols years and years ago. I went to 2-year acting program. We would do things called I make yous, where you would say, I make you sleepy, and you'd say, I make you tired, I make you angry. And I think if anything, I was sort of maybe subconsciously going to Aya, like, you make me, you drown me, or you make me stifled. I make you, you make me hate you.
Yeah.
You make me envy you. That sort of energy, that sort of negative. You stifle me. You make me stifled. You make me, steamrolled.
Yeah.
You make me unheard. So I think that kind of negativity, swirling and living in that was great and helpful.
You are emasculated. Look at you. Look at you. You're an emasculated man.
Did it affect your off-screen relationships, as far as like, did it kind of like bleed over at times just because you were already in that that mindset, or was it easy for you to shed that right away after turning the camera off?
That's a great question. Well,
sorry,
as far as
to put you on the spot,
no, not at all. As far as being a leader, unaffected completely. I walked in, we were prepped. I did my walkthrough in the morning, get everybody fully aware of what we had to do in the makeup chair. I'm talking to Aya, talking to Chris and Becky, fully available. You have to be a fully available leader. But the interesting thing was, for my now fiance, then girlfriend, Lauren, who not only was there from the first draft and then staying through with me during the blizzards, during everything else, to see me at my best and at my worst. So riding high, super cathartic, but then at the end of the day, for me to like come home and feel that a negative energy in me when she just wanted to like talk and have me download like the best and worst parts of my day, and I'd get like irritable, and then I'd step out, I'd astral project and be like, holy fuck, are you Fred? Are you being are you being like unnecessarily nasty? Are you going out of your way to make her feel small because you don't want to talk about your day, like all the things that we do, all the negative things that all of us have kind of find ourselves doing. So I definitely, whether that affected me inadvertently or not, I think if anything, it was just like having to triple thread it, like, figure out how to be a good leader, a good acting partner, and then a good partner when I came home to Lauren. If anything, that was what I thought about. But as far as my professionalism, like, it's all on me, and it was on me well after we wrapped, as Aaron knows well, like down to picking poster images and marketing stuff. It didn't stop for a year. So there were moments where I thought about it, but I don't think it did terribly, hopefully.
Well, you portrayed it very well on screen, so that's the only reason I ask. Like, it felt real, honestly. And I'll get to that a little bit more later.
Just because you're the best-selling author of one horror book doesn't mean you get to school me on story.
Back to you, Aaron. So let's put it this way. I know you have a PhD in cognitive sciences. What kind of perspective does having that educational background, so what kind of perspective does that give you into your now chosen industry as a comedian, as being into filmmaking, being an actor? How does that factor into what you do?
Yeah, in truth, the way that it factors in is less like any facts that I learned in that program, and more the fact that I'm a real odd duck in the entertainment industry, in that I come from a really technical background, right? My undergrad was in math and philosophy, like a lot of logic. My graduate program was a lot of creating statistical models of animal behavior. So like, I love math. I'm super fucking into it. And truly like I'm on acting jobs or like writing jobs, directing jobs, anything, and all these people around me are having all these emotions, and I'm like, do you need water? Like what? Like how do I fix it? Like you're having all these feelings. I just want them fixed, whatever they are.
Yeah.
So that makes me, I think, a really different person in this world, which has obviously pluses and minuses to it.
Yeah.
But that's the main thing. It's not like it's not like I learned the secret to like human personalities or something.
Yeah.
By the EQ program. Mainly, the main thing I learned is how little we know about the brain, but also about people, and that includes about ourselves. We are like observers of ourselves, much as we are observers of other people, and we make these inferences of like, oh, I'm like this. And it's like, you're one of the people that knows you, but you might not be the person who knows you best, actually.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair. I mean, because we do pay more attention to other people a lot of people do, not like narcissists and sociopaths and stuff like that, but like the average person, the average Joe, thinks more consistently about the other people in his life than he does about coming to terms with his or her own feelings about any given thing during the day, like the ups, the downs, And
it helps you that you have a little bit more perspective. You have like kind of a simplified view,
Yeah.
like you were short with Lauren because you were mad that she, is going on vacation without you. It's like, no, you don't understand. She does this thing and it's really specific, and no, I was justified. It's like, no, that's not true. It's very simple.
That's why the therapy industry is thriving. We need that third person. I mean, honestly, you do need another adult to come in and go, no, this is what you need to take a breath. I mean, how many times have you looked back on a chapter in your life where you were God knows what, and you were like, I wanted to kiss that or whatever,
or even like, holy crap, that was embarrassing 10 years later.
No shit. And then in the moment you're like, it's like, you need, whatever. You needed to put all that in your credit card. I don't know, whatever it is, that was, that's why we need other adults. The third eye and the third mouth.
Very true.
You got a big imagination, Freddie.
Josh, throughout the film, we see Fanny regularly undermining Fred's ideas, and the first major instance of this was after he told his werewolf story. Fanny just immediately changes the gender of Fred's protagonist.
What if Sam's a girl?
Well, she's not.
I saw like a kind of half-hearted defense, and then your character relents. And as a writer, that really kind of like hurt me a little bit, like that he didn't believe in his story enough to say no.
Okay, Sam's a girl. Sam's a girl now. Sam's Samantha. Okay? You happy?
You might want a progressive agenda for everything, but this is my story. And as a writer, I feel like we have kind of a right to tell our story how it comes to us, and not always like take every piece of criticism that we receive from outside sources, especially when our story needs to be unique to our vision to a certain extent, accepting criticism. But if you had, I don't know, if you've had kind of like that not that opportunity, but that kind of a situation happen to you in your real life as a writer or as an actor, like a decision that you made creatively, if you've had one of those kind of situations and you could revisit that situation, how would you change your response to it? If you could, or if you would. Sorry.
God, that's a wonderful question. I'm positive. So the real question is, the core of it is, was there a moment in time in my writing work, especially where I was sort of submissive to a note that went against my not integrity, but my intention, my vision as the writer.
Yes,
plenty
exactly.
of times. I probably hundreds of times, mostly in well, I was going to say in the branded world, but that's never your that's never your, your full vision. So maybe not necessarily hundreds of times. I think, yeah, you know yes, but I don't think ever in such a way that it, hurt too bad, or pressed like sourly against my intention or vision. If anything, I've been I've been so resistant to that. It's so funny we're talking about a third party to sort of say what's really going on. I've been so resistant to some feedback in some instances where ultimately when that feedback is applied, I'm thinking actually of Werewolves Within, of this next film, which was technically a studio film. And you hear a lot of directors who move on to the studio system, and I did a rewrite on this script, where they say, well, I got all these ideas and I had to, I didn't believe any of them and I had to kind of, sour through it. Well, almost like I'd say 90% of the time when I thought it was going against my vision, it ultimately, worked, made it a better movie. It made it a better project. Often when I've resisted, it's resisting against something positive. So I don't know what that says about my taste, but it's a tricky thing. I think ultimately, if you're in a position of power, or if you are a writer, you have to keep your pool of people that you know and trust. And I have the same 2 or 3 people that I send all my stuff to, and that I get feedback from, and they can bear to read it the first time around. I really listen to those people. And then it's like everything else, you kind of learn as you go, shit, do I really need to be this resistant from the onset? You kind of make it work. So I can't think of a specific instance, but I know it's happened a bunch of times. I know it's never great in the moment, but it's all ego, at least from my perspective. And, yeah, maybe something more specific will come to me, but it certainly happened. It's a part of what we do, I feel like.
Yeah, no, definitely.
I mean, I think that also cuts to like one of the central themes of Make Cool Shit too, is that, it's not so much notes from other people, but like realities of life come up and it's not what you wanted it to be, right? The actor you originally saw isn't available. So it's like, are you going to give up, or are you going to make it work with what you've got?
What are you working on?
I'm not telling you.
Oh.
And sometimes those realities are other people's opinions, right? If somebody else is funding your project and they're like, well, it needs to be like this, otherwise it doesn't happen, right? Do you pick your battles in some sense, right? If it really is like the core of your idea and it would change the soul of the thing, then you're like, well, then I'm walking away from this.
Yeah.
And if like, if it's important, but maybe not that central, then you're like, okay, this is where I have a little bit of give.
Oh, that's an excellent point. I know I've just being a writer and having submitted stories to various magazines, and I think the most recent one was one from my university, and it was just a school project. They essentially gave me notes on how to change half my story and like to include details that really didn't matter, in my version of the story, they really didn't matter, and then cutting out all these details that for my character really mattered. And I had already had that story read by hundreds of people because I'd already published it elsewhere. And so to change it so dramatically would have lost everything that it was. So I actually I had to pull out of that particular publication because I was just like, I don't agree with any of these edits. It's already, set in stone elsewhere, so I'm not going to change it for a different publication. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Having committed to something and then have so many kind of edit feedbacks, it's just kind of disheartening sometimes. So, walking away sometimes is the only option, in my opinion. But 90% of the time, working with what other people offer you as far as, advice and feedback, I think is really important too.
Amen. I agree.
Sorry.
It's always a surprise too.
Right.
No.
Aaron, you mentioned the Filmmaker's Handbook in episode 1, The Film You Write, and then you go on to talk about how despite all the well-meaning instruction in these kinds of textbooks, there's always one element that's lacking, and that's the idea.
All your $1 million ideas?
And I actually just watched a TEDx talk you did a few years back about finding your raptor.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that idea is essential to the story making process. And the problem is there is no way to instruct how to get ideas. So do you feel like just watching kind of the process of making Scare Me, do you feel like you understand that process of, you know, ideas forming and changing and evolving more now that you've hosted this project, or is it still a mystifying mysterious kind of thing?
I mean, look, I don't know why anyone would listen to me on this topic, but I'll venture my 2 cents anyway. I think ideas are maybe less important than everybody seems to think that they are. I mean, execution is so much, right?
Cue convenient thunder and lightning.
What is, you know, take like, you know, any film that you love, you know, like there are dozens of the bad version of that thing, and they suck. And so, like, who cares? Like, it was a great idea, and that doesn't amount to much. So like, I think I have a greater appreciation for how even a small twist or a small change on an existing well-trod idea can open a floodgate, is more than enough for like a large project, even like a feature-length project.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just a small different take on a classic idea can open up a whole world to you. So I think my answer to that is really like, no, I don't have any idea where they come from. but even small ones that you're like, you know, like in Midnight in Paris, Woody Allen, or I guess his stand-in, Luke Wilson, who's like essentially the stand-in for Woody Allen in that movie, goes like, I guess what I'm saying is, no matter what time you're born into, you'll always be nostalgic for a different time. It may not be the most profound point in the world, but it's my point. And like, that is all that the movie is saying. But it's like a pretty entertaining movie. It's enough to sustain a movie. And it's like, that's a fucking one-sentence thought. So like, maybe we should all just be a little less precious with our ideas.
That's fair. Speaking of which, about being precious with ideas, Josh, there is a pretty serious topic as far as like creatives go, brought up in your movie that I didn't really see anyone else talk about in some, like, all the interviews that I read. Maybe there's an obscure one that I haven't seen or read, but at the end of the movie, you tackle the concept of constitutes as inspiration for a writer and what constitutes as stealing. So what's crossing the line with Fanny's Notebook. So where do you personally feel like that line is drawn, and what do you think is ethical inspiration versus what's downright just taking someone else's idea and not crediting them for it? Not asking you if you've done it, just like, what do you think constitutes that?
Some people steal, especially, you know, desperate white dudes like you.
It's a great another great question.
Sorry.
Mary, I don't know. It's like
bangers.
It's really, honestly, bangers. So I'm excited to answer. It's so funny. I very recently sent a very rough draft of the script too. Like, we were talking about these two friends in my circle. I keep sending everything to my buddy Charlie, and I had sent him something, and he goes, "Wow, I was really humbled that on page 58 you used a symphony of cracking bones." And I was like, holy shit, he'd sent me a script 2 weeks ago where he had used this phrase, a symphony of cracking bones, you know, in reference to, you know, some snowplow, you know, barreling into some, you know, poor soul on a street. And I borrowed, you know, I call it borrowing, and it is borrowing. I mean, I have a notes doc of phrases and words from everything from Peter Straub's Ghost Story to Tom Perotta's Little Children, where I go, I love that phrase. I'm going to put that, you know, glacial coldness, or a stare of glacial coldness is I guess technically borrowing, or going, this is how we build knowledge and build prose, right? We take this great little nugget, and then we build it out, put it in our own language or support it with our own language. So there's borrowing, and then there's stealing. I'll just say I think this will come out, and it's relatively in my answer in regards to the film, is where Fred was by the time he read Fanny's notebook. Fanny was borrowing. Fanny was picking up on
This part of the story?
a word, a phrase, making kind of writer notes, comedian's notes, if you will, as all of us have done at some point, whether in here on our notes doc or on a small pad and pen. Fred is a broken 30-something male with a fragile ego who had drank a bit too much and done a bit too much drugs and felt emasculated in the presence of this talented woman to whose talent he did feel entitled to, and to whom he also felt congruently talented to a degree. Once he hears Venus, that's it. Maybe I could actually pop this out. Maybe we're equal. But he reads her notebook, and he aggrandizes, he intensifies the intention, and he gets imaginative to the point of, I need to create a scapegoat here. So he imagines, he projects that she's stealing. He's trying to formulate that kind of in his mind because he's drunk, fucked up, and his ego is bruised. If you are legitimately stealing, if I tell you, I've had this happen before. If I tell you an idea I have for a book or for a movie, and I say, so it's about this, but then this happens, and then in the end you find out it's blank. And then 2 weeks later, I hear from, my friend working at, NBC that they talked to, you and they heard about this great idea. Oh shit, that's then that's bad news, and that happens, and it happens a lot. And that shit's scary. That's very scary to me personally. I've had it happen to me before in different ways. And the scariest thing is, I wake up in cold sweats often.
Okay.
Thinking about, oh shit, if I come up with some ideas, it's something that I sponged, like in the way Robin Williams was even criticized for as a comedian, as someone who so rapidly and frequently sponges that he'll just spit out something he heard from someone else's set, as an example. So it's a fear that I certainly have to a degree, but that's the thing to worry about versus what's innocuous.
One of the reasons why I ask is that sponging quality. Like it's so natural to, especially for I feel just as creative people, it's so natural to, pick up on something that really kind of resonates with you, either on a comedy basis, like, oh, holy shit, that was hilarious, like, and it sticks in your mind, or something that's incredibly scary, like some of like the just like director, I guess, decisions that you made with like camera angles and stuff like that really just, they stick with you. Like those are things that you see kind of appear in other horror movies, and that's what I think really brought me into those scary moments, is like, holy shit, this is that angle. And having like those low angles or those high angles, and just having it just totally make the scene. And another thing that I noticed, and this goes into my next question for you, Josh, the insertion of sound effects to the telling of these stories, I feel like is what made a lot of those scenes so successful. They make the scenes come to life, and I'm wondering, like, how difficult was it for you to find that healthy balance between inserted sound effects and ones that you actually made yourself with your mouth, like the thumping up the stairs as an example?
There's only so much I can do as an actor and with the instrument of my voice, and when in the emotional context of telling a story, especially if it's a raw story, the rawness of the early side of the story. And there was the unspoken rule of Scare Me is that the more committed you are, the more they sort of manifest and come to life. And so it's like, in the quiet of the cabin, as Fred is, making thumping noises, you can hear that they just intensify just by a little pinch.
Mm-hmm.
And then, a kablam is added that is imagined. If not even for just a pinch of a jiggle on the door, meaning that he actually got lost in his own story. He got swept up by it. The more committed they get in the film, the more actual sound sort of comes into play. So that was my roadmap for it. It was, Fanny especially is deft at storytelling in a way that Fred is, and it's seamless for her. So it's almost as soon as she starts talking, you're hearing the orchestra of the soundscape.
That eerie
exactly.
ambiance.
I'm going to get you.
Wow.
I kind of figured that because like it was more involving. Like the further they got committed into the story, the more involved I felt as an audience member. And back to the thumping up the stairs and then that final jolt. I've actually felt that way before as a storyteller, like just in the dark, kind of imagining things, and you hear something and you're just like, holy shit, no, that wasn't real. But then you go to the I guess the cellar door, the basement door, you open it, and instead of playing into that cliche of like going down into the dark basement, you're like,
nope.
And just even reimagining that part, that actually made my boyfriend laugh out loud, and that's kind of like, I'm not saying like that's super high praise, but like it obviously struck more than just me as just hilarious, because that is that scary moment that you're just like, this is what people in horror movies do, and then they die.
Yeah, right. I'm not gonna do it. Maybe this is like, when you would shout, turn around at the screen.
Don't go down there.
I have a question. I have a question for you. So Mary, I don't know if you've gotten the chance to listen to this week's episode of the podcast, but we dive into a lot of the sound design stuff specifically on this topic. And we get to like listen to Josh kind of creating it on the fly with his like sound designer and mixer. But I have a question for you, Josh. So and we've never talked about this, but when I first started watching Scare Me, I obviously picked up on that as well. That like the more committed they get, the more real it becomes. Was there a version of this script where as they get more and more involved, the things they're talking about actually become real and their stories tear them apart? That is where I thought that was headed.
Breathe like a werewolf. Breathe.
That's where I break my own rule. You only see one werewolf hand, for example. I chalk it up to like the rawness and the masculine rawness of Fred's storytelling, and then you see like a hairy werewolf hand.
Holy fuck, that's fucking scary.
And then you never quite see anything again. Some doors open and sound. Well, they do. They get the power of three gets so intense that the eyes, right? The dishwasher, the troll eyes, but the power of three storytelling and actually being in flow becomes literally transportive. It takes them to another place with with the song sequence. But that is definitely the biggest for anyone who hates on the film. That's what everybody, like I keep saying, it's like the people that expected a Cthulhu to walk down the stairs in the last 5 minutes are so upset. That expected a real witch or a real werewolf and a real creepy grandpa. I mean, that would have been awesome. But we talk about this in the podcast. This movie was created from, literally in that Duplassian way, reading Like Brothers, which is one of the things that kick my ass into gear, Mark and J. Duplass's book. Write to your resources. I'm the cheapest actor because I can, I'm paying myself, but I'm the cheapest director and writer. I haven't been paid still. Those payments are deferred. And I don't have all these props or all this makeup, and I certainly don't have the time to create a Cthulhu, a grandpa, a werewolf, and a such and such. So yeah, I at no point was there ever a big kind of monstrous reveal, but I knew from the get-go that I wanted there to be some kind of Spike Jonze adaptation, sort of a situation where suddenly our characters are in a horror film, but let's loop it around to what's happening in the world. I was talking about writing angry. I was talking about, being pissed off about what was going on in Me Too. That's pretty fucking scary. Here we are. But I would have liked to see a, full werewolf costume. We could only afford the hand,
Kind of segueing into this question from what you asked, Josh, the podcast really brought to light how huge of an undertaking even a low budget indie film like Scare Me is. And despite how successful and how non-indie it looks, like with the quality of the video and everything, what was it like to be a fly on that wall, so to speak, to have that kind of bird's eye view of everything?
So it was even more intense than that. I was not on set while they were recording.
Okay.
Our producer Donnie was, who's like the I say at one point he's the Josh of this podcast. It's really his baby, and so he has no experience on set whatsoever, right? I've done some commercials and some sketch videos and stuff like that, a lot of it with Josh, and so I would get it, right? I can very well imagine everything that was happening there. I think. Who really knows? But Donnie, is like a fucking babe in the woods and is running around with a little handheld recorder trying to be like, hey, is now a good, everyone's like, now is not a good time, Donnie. It's very funny.
Donnie was comically tactless. It was like there's a segment that I had Donnie cut out, where he went up to Io when she was literally getting a massage. I had hired a masseuse to come on to set because it was it's our last day or one of the last days, and she's like, "Is now a good time?" And she goes, "No, of course not." I don't want to. She's literally, it's the 5-minute massage of getting Donnie, but it just adds to the comical nature of it because you can just hear, Donnie calling his buddies back at MCS or just sort of saying, "Yeah, I'm, just hoping to get some chicken parm on set today," or whatever. It's hysterical, and it's it was also because of this is going to come out inelegant, but I did not know how this product was going to come out. The show itself. When Aaron came aboard, I told Aaron this, I told everybody this, I was way more willing to open up to someone who I knew it would be in good hands. Aaron and I have known each other for probably close to a decade. Donnie, I didn't know, and I did not know that this thing was going to turn out as, quality. It is a hit. It is a quality hit. I did not know it was going to turn out to be what it was, based on because of this babe in the woods sort of situation with Donnie kind of going, "Is now a good time?" When we're we're rolling, whatever. It adds to the charm of the whole thing and why I'll listen to it forever, once a year on Christmas Day.
That's awesome.
Wow, that was really freaky.
Yeah.
Another serious one for you, Josh. Sorry. Gonna do this to you again.
I get all the fun ones.
Right. In one of the final scenes with Aya, it kind of brought to memory a time when I had been unwittingly in a situation that was similar to that, with a man that I'd hardly known. And, every woman kind of has one of these experiences, as I'm sure you guys both know. But just being in that situation, you feel put at a disadvantage as a woman.
Fred, what are you doing with that poker?
And given that you've been pretty vocal about the impact of those kinds of situations on, the women in your life, for example, can you take me through what it was like to get into the mind of Fred? What was it like really emotionally for you having to put yourself into a situation that you didn't, or a mindset that you didn't agree with on a personal level?
Well, Aya Cash made it really easy because she's a terrific partner and she was so fun to play with. And she's also the type of actor who told me from the beginning, she said, I'm not going to be some serious sad sack who's going to like have to listen to sad music and stare at a corner when we're acting or before we act. As soon as camera cuts, I'm going to be jumping around and, being flirty and funny and making jokes and fart noises and whatever.
Get up and scare me, motherfucker! We're burning moonlight!
Okay, all right.
So that made it easy because I'm the same way. I don't need to kind of, hype myself up. To get into the mindset of someone I don't disagree, I don't agree with. It was cathartic. This is everything I've wanted to do. I wrote this script essentially so that I could dip my feet into, or my toes into, that world, that acting style, that like basically transporting back to the serious work that the 14-year-old me was doing in like Lola Cohen's basement in Woodstock, New York. One of Strasberg's last students, like taking her like invite only classes and trying to be serious. And so here was an opportunity to go back to, or to draw on toolboxes, the toolbox of cobweb ridden tools from my time in acting school, and go, okay, I'm really actually going to do the work in the scene. So it was, I hate to say it was fun, but it's that sort of thing of playing the villain.
Legitimately forgets that he's bad.
I think if anything, from a technical standpoint, the most difficult thing for me was to scream at her, just scream, like really scream.
Run! Run! Run!
And to chase her even down the stairs. We didn't have a stunt person, and there was no stunt, but it was just like, I'm going to chase you, you're going to round the corner, and we're going to use the sound of our clumping steps down the stairs. Be careful, because the camera doesn't see anything. We couldn't afford it anyway. We do it all with sound in this this reprised kind of way, and we just trusted each other. This is what you get with someone who's willing to kind of dive in the way that the way that I was.
You brought up a good point about how it was difficult for you to scream at her and actually vocally be sound angry, or just especially targeting her as a character, like your character targeting her as a character. I feel that's something that a lot of people, not having that release, like you said, it was cathartic to be able to put yourself in those shoes, because otherwise, as a person, you seem like you're not the type that would go around screaming at people. But kind of like screaming into a pillow, it's kind of cathartic to release that, and it's almost like an adrenaline rush, like that anger that's not really directed at anyone, but just that everyone has, just deep down, that moderate annoyances that just build up over time. And then not everyone has a release to just say, like, my day was really shitty, and I don't have anyone that I can really talk to in a way that I won't necessarily hurt their feelings. And I think that's really important, just as human beings, to understand like how to deal with those situations. So that's pretty cool that that was kind of a cathartic experience for you. Maybe we all need to scream act occasionally.
It's why I went to why I got into it, why I still make videos. I make silly videos because I'm angry, because I'm angry about, I wrote this script angry. I'm angry about the kind of people that I am impersonating, about the things that they make me feel, like the real versions of the the wellness people that don't believe in vaccines, or the coworkers, the male coworkers who interrupt their women coworkers. I'm angry about that, and so that's why they're good. I'd like to think, and it is cathartic for me to do it, because I'm taking that energy, and we should all have that, whether it's with writing, or Aaron with acting, and with putting that energy into the podcast, and being acerbic about the way certain things are going down, whatever it is. We all need that kind of thing. It's always been that for me in acting, and creating shit. We all need it. I wish, the accountants of the world also painted or also had that extra thing, or we could all follow that creative thing that we wanted to do, because I think, the world would be better for it. There'd be less Freds, baby.
Agreed.
Glad to see you guys aren't killing each other out here, because it would be the perfect night to do it,
All right, Aaron, so your voice performance, and Josh briefly mentioned this, is your chance to have an outlet in this situation anyways, for your own, emotions, not necessarily anger, but anything. Like, you were very expressive in the podcast. Your tone was very conversational, but there was also those moments where it's just like, fuck yeah. Did you approach this as like a legitimate voice acting experience, or was this more of like a laid back, just conversational thing where you just talk about making cool shit, like literally?
Another great question. You should do this professionally. This is I say that because it is a hard line to walk. I hate when it feels really put on. I can't stand certain podcasts, especially science podcasts, where they clearly know the answers to the questions that they're asking, and they're like interviewing somebody and they're like, gee, so is that the same peptide that you mentioned earlier? And it's like, yes, that's why he's on your fucking show. We know that you know this. Why are we doing this fucking game? So like, I didn't want to do that, and I want it to be natural. But obviously, it's boring to hear somebody be a robot. So the way that I tried to go about it, at least this round, is I do care. I care about this story, and not only because it's specifically this story, but I care about. Oh man, all right, I'm sorry, I can't help it. I go like big picture with this stuff. This is like why we're here. This is why human beings are on Earth. Like, this guy cares about a thing, and that's what he wants to do. And like, is our world going to let him do that thing, or is it going to crush him into the ground along with his dreams? What's going to happen? I give a shit about that. And so I'm trying to, like, just as honestly as I can, tap into that part of me that honestly does fucking give a shit. And to the people that are, like, making his life more difficult, or being like, well, you know what you should do? You got to shoot it on film. If you don't shoot it on film, then just, like, don't do it at all. Or, like, whatever bullshit obstacle somebody's throwing in his way for their own ego or pretension or whatever it is. And those people I genuinely fucking hate, and they can go die. So I care about this story. I care about art because I care about meaning. Our lives should have meaning, however we decide to ascribe that ourselves. And this story is about that, and it matters. And it matters to me. So I try to just be, like, real and conversational, but also not bullshit the audience that, like, I do give a shit.
It definitely came across that way. That's why I had to ask, because I was like, are you just a really fucking fantastic actor, or did you really care about this?
Well, I think that's
little column A, little column B, right?
Tapping into the part, when Josh is playing Fred, right? He's not, like, being super great at imitating a Fred in his life, at least, like, not based on what he said half an hour ago. He's like, I'm tapping into this jealous, shitty part of me, which we all have, right? We all have it. And if you can honestly tap into, and now I'm just teaching you fucking acting 101. You know this. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it was fantastic.
No, that's dead on. I mean, you said it, man. And that's what I think what really got me listening to that first episode of Make Cool Shit was like, this is, there was something for me just in knowing you, Aaron, personally, and the story of it all, the quality of it all. I think that's what great storytelling is. You're looking at it, I assume, as a writer, right? And you're like, okay, big picture. Mm-hmm. Here are the obstacles. Here's our protagonist and the antagonist's nature, and it comes off as something you want to learn more about. It's why people keep saying, I've listened to every episode of this, and it's why the fuck aren't they all out right now? And There was one review that said these episodes aren't long enough. And I agree.
I kind of felt like they should have been longer. No offense, guys, but they were awesome. I wanted to keep listening to it.
Same.
Keep wanting more.
You're right. All right, Josh. Final question for you. We're getting to the end here. My boyfriend and I really enjoyed Scare Me to the point where he and I are both looking forward to seeing what you do next. I saw that, and you mentioned earlier also, but I saw that you were or are directing Werewolves Within. I don't know if you guys have finished or in post-production or whatever, but I know it's set to be released in June, so it should be complete, right? I'm guessing. I don't know how it works there. But regardless of that, beyond Werewolves Within, do you think that you found that new home for yourself as not necessarily just an actor, but a director, as the horror comedy genre?
I love the horror comedy genre, but I'd also love to I'd love to do a musical. I'd love to do something for kids. I'd love to do, more sort of social horror for sure. I'd also like to do just, werewolves kind of made me realize I think I'm just, with my dense brain as well, I like escapism. I like fun, but if you can get away with it, violent horror, the kind of, the more dangerous sort of Spielberg, Carpentry stuff. And I was, there was some review that compared it to like Carpenter and Clue, of which that isn't something we set out to necessarily make, but that ended up being the vibe of the film. I really love the genre, and like I said, I was a horror fan before I was a comedy fan, so I'm happy to be here, happy to take the gigs people kind of ask me to pitch on. I hope that I can create more sort of original projects, and that star marginalized people that don't look like me, people under the radar, people that haven't necessarily had a chance to play certain roles, much like Aya not necessarily ever doing a role where she had to do all these voices in physical comedy. I'd like to continue doing that for the actors in my life and the actors that I fan over.
It's a good empire.
And to, frankly, not whitewash the films that I make. I'm already a 30-something filmmaker. I want to, I want to provide opportunities. It kind of starts that way. So if I'm going to be in this genre, absolutely. If I'm going to be in this genre or any genre, that is my responsibility. I'm a gatekeeper, then I have a responsibility. And so that's part of what my MO moving forward is going to be.
That's really awesome of you. Thank you for that, by the way.
Well, don't thank me yet. I haven't done it, so we'll see.
But your intention is half of it, so that's actually really awesome.
But you're still hiring me too, right?
all the time. Yeah. I love working with Aaron. You have no idea. Yeah.
All right, and Aaron, final question for you too. And this might be another fun one. I don't know. Overall, what would you say your greatest takeaway from this entire experience has been? Just watching Josh and knowing him for so long and watching this all come to fruition.
I didn't know that the people around me when I was young that I thought were really good, like really, really good, were going to be the next generation of like people that everybody recognizes as really, really good. I thought like they're like the people who work in Hollywood and are really successful are like aliens from another planet or something. Like they aren't, I mean, it doesn't make any sense, right, in hindsight, but they aren't like the funny people from UCB that I grew up doing sketch stuff with, and Josh and all those people. And it's the importance of being kind and generous and collaborative with everybody around you. And sorry, I mean, me framing it in this way makes it sound like it's some like great Machiavellian plan to like, I'll get ahead because then they'll get ahead. And like, it's not that calculated. It's like, if you are nice and good and generous with your time and efforts, everyone will like you and want to work with you, and also your life will be good. So like worst thing that comes out of it is you're a good person and you have a nice life. So I guess that's really.
But Scott Rudin, Scott Rudin though probably has a really good. I've never broken a laptop on anyone's hands, but it's true. I'll tell you that literally what Aaron said. One time I stopped Conan O'Brien on the street. I saw him. I stopped him because he knew. Long story longer. He knew my friend Sam's father, who's Robert Reich. Then Robert Reich and Sam Reich, College Humor, his dad's Robert Reich, former Secretary of Labor. He would do stuff with Conan. And so I ran to Conan. I said, hi, I'm, Robert's a friend of mine. I know his son, this, that, and the other thing. And I can't remember how we got to his saying this, but he said, he ended up saying to me, like on his walk home, like on the Upper West Side, he said, well, if you work hard and you're nice to people, like you will be successful. I think he literally said that. He was like, I mean, if you just like work hard and you're nice, like, yeah, you'll be a success. And it's like totally right. And we've all busted our ass in so many ways. If we all on this interview right now thought back to all the times we pushed and pushed and pushed and thought, well, we could have been irritable or nasty to X, Y, and Z, but instead we chose kindness and we ended up in this great place where we get to continue talking to great people. We're all successes because of that, and we hold people close to us who are nice and collaborate and communicate and don't need to break laptops on people's hands to get shit done. And there's no better way to do it. So anyway, I fully agree with that sentiment. And I think let's meet back here in 10 years. I think this is a new trio.
We'll do that little reunion for your first feature film.
Yeah. The Wet Hot American Summer return. Yeah.
All right, guys. It was so awesome talking to you both. I appreciate you being here again. You both are really rad individuals. I'm sorry, I just dated myself.
We are rad, and you are rad.
Mary, you're honestly one of the best interviews. I've done so many this past year, and it's really fucking awesome questions. So thank you. You made this afternoon, evening a pleasure.
Thank you. And I apologize. We did go like way over what I scheduled you guys for, but thank you so much for sticking with me and bearing with it to the end. I hope you guys have a wonderful night and stay safe in times of COVID. Hope you guys are well.
Same to you. Both of you. Bye, you guys. Bye, Aaron. Nice seeing you. Bye.
Bye, Josh. Great to see you. Bye.
All right. Evening, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
I want to thank you guys again for joining me today while I interviewed Josh Ruben and Aaron Kheifets. Again, you should check this show out. It's called Make Cool Shit. It's a podcast that dedicated its entire first season to documenting the making of Josh Ruben's first feature film, Scare Me. I also highly recommend you check out that movie. And in the spirit of things, I'm going to be linking Make Cool Shit and Scare Me in the description below so that you can check those out. If you like them, if you hate them, I don't care which, let me know down in the comments below. I think this will be a really interesting thing for anyone who's interested in filmmaking, indie films, horror films, comedy horror, or just straight comedy. If you're interested in any of those things, you're probably going to be interested in wanting to see Scare Me or even listening to Make Cool Shit. Can't emphasize that enough. Anyways, thank you guys again for joining me, and I hope you have a great night.